Good morning, and this is our midweek mini lecture that I'm going to start providing. Get these to you guys on Tuesday. I know this one is going to be a day late, so my apologies for that. But want to walk through a little bit about what we're going to be working on and doing some in-person workshop in class this weekend. And this is as we talk about and move into content creation on our blog. So the idea is, how do we start writing blog posts or recording blog posts, either audio or video, that really work? What are some tips and tricks? And just like anything else that we've talked about, content creation is a very important part of social media and digital marketing to be in the field of the 99.1, to be in that 1% of people who actually are creators. So what we need to do is we need to couple our social media strategy with driving people to a website. In this case, it's going to be our blog, where we're going to demonstrate what we're learning, what we're covering, and what we know. Now, I want to qualify too by saying that this is not the same as an academic article. So this is more written in a voice that's true to who you are. And you want to be careful with grammar, of course, and you want to make sure that the blog post makes sense. Typically, you're looking at 500 to 750 words, but we'll see by looking at some examples that a lot of the blog posts that are really well done, what they are they're short paragraphs broken up by headings, subheadings, and images. So the style of the web for a blog post is scanning. I don't want you getting too worried about that yet, because again, we'll talk about some of this in class and break it out. But I want you to be thinking about your blog post themselves and what you should be doing. So when we think about the blogging, the idea is to establish yourself as having some knowledge and expertise. Think of it, if you're applying for jobs, as a way to demonstrate your knowledge and talk about things that you might discuss in a job interview. So ahead of time, you're proactively showing that you're knowledgeable and experienced. One thing people will do is they'll create original content, or what I really love to do, and I think works really well for college students, is to document what you're learning, document what you've covered. I was talking to a student recently, and they were telling me about a class they're in, and I'm like, I would love to be in that class. That class would be so cool to be in, but I can't be in it. Why don't you tweet out or write blog posts about key takeaways each week that you're getting from that class? And you can demonstrate not only that you're learning in class, but demonstrate what you know and how it applies to your field or industry. You could document yourself learning about doing something new. So Pat Flynn, who I shared from Smart Passive Income, where he documented his process of passing a architecture exam, and he blogged his notes and shared out his notes, and he was able to turn just him documenting his process and his journey into a 7-figure-a-year business. It doesn't need to be earth-shattering original. What it needs to do is it needs to demonstrate what you're learning or what you're doing, or something that you know and something that you've done. So, and then what we do is we share those things out on social. So when we get started, we can think about what types of posts do we want to do. So I'm going to give you some formulas, and I'm more than happy to sit down with each one of you and give you specific recommendations for exactly what types of posts to create. But I want to show you some types of posts, and then the way you get started on putting your posts together is you first write the title, and then you write the first paragraph. And when you work on that, which was exercise 5, what that helps you to do is to get into flow of what your post is going to be about, but it also helps a reader, who is essentially a scanner online, quickly identify whether or not a post is going to be of value to them, hook them in, and then the first paragraph gives them a sense of what it is that you're going to be covering and whether or not the article is going to be relevant to them. So here's a quick example of some types of posts you can do. So number one is you can do how-tos, and all this is telling somebody how to do or accomplish a particular task. So one example is you could do a blog post on how science communicators can effectively use Twitter, and you set it up as a how-to post. You can say how to effectively study for an exam, how to effectively put together a bid for a project, whatever it is that you are studying or are interested in any way, whether academic or not, how-tos are really popular. Next is list posts. List posts are very, very popular. And this is where you create a number, like a bulleted list or a numbered list of items that somebody is going to be learning about. So for example, top 5 exercises to do if you have knee pain could be the title of a blog post. 3 tips I learned by, 3 things I wish I knew when I was a college freshman. You could do something along the lines of top 3 dental innovations that took place that are new in 2019 and 2020. So the idea is list posts work really, really well, and it gives you a target for how many paragraphs you might write and what you're going to be covering. Resources posts are where you point out things that you think are valuable to somebody else. So you share your expertise, and I'm using a list example here of top 5 podcasts to follow. So using that list post again, but basically say, if I were to sit down with you and you would talk to me about your area of expertise, all of you are more expert in some areas than I am. And I might say, well, tell me about that. Are there any books or podcasts or videos you might recommend I watch? And you might say, oh yeah, let me give you a couple of books and a couple of Netflix shows I would watch that would help you get up to date on what's going on here. And so a resource post, all it is you're taking your knowledge and sharing what you think are the most valuable resources. And again, that can be on anything from study tips to tips on how to do something, how to learn something, basically helping somebody streamline the learning process. So instead of going to Google saying, here are the top 5 things I would read or the top 3 things that I would read. You can also do guides, checklists, and to-dos. So this is very much similar to a how-to, but it's a little bit different. So you might, for example, write a blog post that says a simple guide for how to get into your top grad school of choice, or a simple guide for how to get accepted into college, or a simple guide on how to make it through your first set of midterms, or a guide to how to, dress appropriately and prepare for a job interview. Again, think of what's relevant to your topic area, but people love having guides or checklists or to-do items to prepare for something. So again, it can be all different types of things. 3 ways to, or here's a simple checklist to make the most of each college class you take. Here's a checklist for how to prepare for creating a LinkedIn page for getting noticed by employers. Again, whatever it is that you want to put together, again, setting something up where it talks about it being a guide, a checklist, or a to-do. Another example is of reviews. So reviewing items and giving your perspective. This is where you see a lot of social media influencers getting traction. So you can review items, products, services, videos, books, classes, whatever it might be, and say, here is a book that I recently read or a Netflix series I recently watched, and here's what I think of it. So basically think of your area of expertise and think of things that are relevant to your field that you're interested in, where you want to be an expert if you don't feel expert already. And what you do is you review some of the items that, everything from shoe reviews I've seen people do, to software reviews, to gaming tips and advice. And then what you can also do for reviews is you can do versus. You can do the Whopper versus the Big Mac, as a simple example, or yoga versus active isolated stretching, which one I preferred and why. Vegetarianism versus veganism, or organic versus non-organic, whatever it is. Those posts tend to resonate really well. And then last but not least is doing some type of interview. So finding people who are expert in your field and that you look up to and doing interviews. Now this could be what I often recommend for students is do something like where you're going to interview somebody who works at a company where you want to work and say, hey, can I do an interview with you and tell me, what are some of the things that help you to be successful at your job? You could do that. Or you could go to a professor or an industry thought leader and say, hey, I'd love to do an interview and find out how you got to where you are. It's a great way to get connected. It's a great way to build your network, and it's also a great way to highlight people to your network, no matter how small, of people. Like if you interviewed somebody who is an expert, I guarantee you somebody in your friend group and your network doesn't know them. So this is a chance for the interviewer, or the interviewee, the person who's getting interviewed, to get exposed to a new audience. And that's the benefit that you can provide to somebody and offer them for an interview. So some simple examples of types of posts, and again, we're not creating a gazillion posts, but you could do one of each of these. You could do all how-to posts, you could do all lists posts, completely up to you. But the idea is this gives some framework for the types of posts to be thinking about. Now I want to show you this quick document called Headline Hacks. And Headline Hacks is a document that I've talked about, and it's include a link for it, but it's done by a gentleman named John Morrow. John's a super interesting guy, and what he did was he was challenged to get a job to come up with writing great blog post titles for a company called Copyblogger. So he wanted to work for a company called Copyblogger, and what he wanted to do was he wanted to write headlines. Now, John is unique in that he has a form of ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, where he's paralyzed from the neck down, and that has been progressing since he's been a young kid. So he has no choice but to work from home, requires 24-hour nursing care, and usually what happened is Copyblogger, whenever they would get anybody saying they wanted a job, they would say, hey, we want you to create a list of like 100 headlines and send it to us within a week, and we'll consider that as your job interview. So a whole bunch of people reached out to Copyblogger to get jobs, and Copyblogger would say, okay, here's your job interview, write 100 really good titles or headlines and send them back to us. Well, nobody did it except John. John was the first person to do it, and when he did it, they were totally blown away, because Copyblogger is one of the most trafficked websites in the world when it comes to blogging. And he got hired because he did such a good job. And not only did he do 100, he did something like 500 and turned it around in 24 hours. And he became known as the expert, one of the top, if not the top expert in the world on how to write good headlines to get noticed when you post on social media to drive traffic to your blog, as well as how to get noticed on Google search. So he put together this simple guide. It's free downloadable guide, and I'll just take you through some examples of them. So that's a picture of John. You can see him in his wheelchair there. Super good guy. But basically what he does is he walks through and talks through how can you write a how-to headline. So how to be blank. So how to be top of your class. How to be blank a desirable quality, how to blank without a blank. So how to succeed in college without studying 50 hours a day. How to do something in 5 minutes. So again, when you look at these, all you do is you insert your topic into this and you use these formulas. People love doing things in a short amount of time. So how to build your LinkedIn profile in 5 minutes or less to get started, as an example. And if you work your way through this, he shows you examples of list posts. He shows you examples of different headlines that work and that are proven by A/B testing, numerous stuff. Now, what he does is when you dig into this, you'll see he gives a basic rundown of each of the headline areas, and then he shows headlines that he has used and he has put together. So for how to create a social media marketing plan, how to build a sales machine that works while you sleep, how to make lavender lemonade to get rid of headaches and anxiety, and then the desirable quality, how to be more interesting, how to be more productive on social, how to be unforgettable. And you could add to this, you could say how to be unforgettable in a job interview, how to be more interesting when you go to a networking event, how to be more interesting when you apply for graduate school. So what I love about these is these are super clear, and he gives really explicit examples of what you can do and basically borrow from this. I mean, that's exactly what he said. He says, take this. I'm giving this to you to use as a model. What's cool with this from a social media perspective is this content also can be used for text on your social media posts to get your social media posts recognized. So when you post, well, what am I going to put on Instagram or LinkedIn or Snapchat or whatever to get people to drive them to click and to do something, move them to learn more about the topic that I wrote a blog post about, or something that's on my website, this is a simple thing that you can use. So that's a free downloadable resource. It is a great, phenomenal resource from literally one of the top headline, if not top headline experts in the absolute world. So recommend you check that out. Now, after you write your first paragraph, so I want you to go back and look at, exercise number 5, where you looked at those first paragraph or titles as you start writing your first paragraph. And first paragraphs matter because what they do is, if you use a first paragraph well, it's like getting a sample of food outside of a restaurant to try to drive you to go into the restaurant to buy a meal. Basically, you're giving somebody a sample of what they're going to learn. So it's important when you give the sample that it's a good sample. Think of somebody at a food court, and giving out samples there. The idea is giving out those samples is to give somebody a sense of what they might get if they go to your restaurant, assuming you're giving out the samples, so that they choose your restaurant versus all of the other restaurants in the food court. So what you want to do with that first paragraph is you want to establish either you have expertise or experience. You want to be able to show empathy, meaning that as an audience member what your audience is thinking about. What are they worried about? What are they concerned about? What do they need to learn? So I'll show you an example with specific language, and then you want to be unbiased and say, I'm not here to push an agenda. I'm here to help educate. And this is where this works in all kinds of sales. It works in everything, is that when you tell the pluses and minuses, because everything has a plus and a minus, you can establish right away. Somebody reads that first paragraph, they're like, wow, this person knows what they're talking about. I'm going to read more. I'm going to dig in. So here's an example from a website called Next Scientist. And I love this site for a variety of reasons, but if you look at it, it is very super niche. And it says, when we talked about the first exercises that we did, and then doing our mission statement exercise that we did a couple weeks ago, look at what Next Scientist says. Next Scientists say, we are helping PhD students. Nobody else, just PhD students. So if you're not a PhD student, we're not for you. But if you are, guess what? You're one of our potential 1,000 true fans. And how do we help you? We help you stay motivated while you're in school, because graduate and PhD school is hard. We will help you graduate, because getting in grad school and a PhD program is one thing, finishing is another. And then we'll help you get a job and help you find a job after you get your degree. How valuable is that? So they do a great job of that. But here's what they do that I think is really good. Look at their headlines and then look at the sample first paragraphs from their blogs. How to ask good questions at scientific meetings. So a how-to question, right? And then what they do is they establish empathy right away by saying, being a PhD student, notice the pronoun they're using. You are very likely to attend scientific meetings, conferences, or similar. You'll spend hours or even days of your time listening to talks and presentations. Most of the talks will not cover your particular topic of research, meaning some of them are going to be boring. Guess what? I'm telling you, I know that as a PhD student, that Julian, who's writing this, is saying that. But you can maximize your personal outcome by actively engaging in the Q&A part. So what it's saying is, hey, I'm a PhD student like you. I've gone to a lot of meetings or conferences. Sometimes it's like not all that exciting, but here's a way you can make it valuable to you. And then this one, 3 ways to exercise during your PhD. This is a great example because it shows that it does take mental and physical health to be able to accomplish not just academic acuity to get through a PhD program. And it says right away, doing a PhD takes an extreme toll on your body. Don't you feel completely tired and unmotivated after a long day in the lab or long hours staring at a computer? That's establishing empathy. Another example that I really, really liked was this one, and this was written by someone who said, how writing a science blog saved my PhD. And if you look at start reading it, it says people ask for the benefits of writing a science blog before deciding what writing makes sense. Some say it gives you exposures, others say that it'll help you with publications. But now as I look back, so they're giving you their perspective of, hey, I'm documenting my journey. here's the benefits that I got. It helped me not give up on my PhD. So this is a first person account, but again, it's like a how-to guide, saying this is what I learned and I want to share my experience from you. So these are great examples to use as samples of first paragraphs and headlines and how they work together. So the exercise was to work on that potential post title and first draft. And then basically some formulas for what you can do. What you'll see with a lot of blog posts, and there's no perfect way to do this, these are just examples for you, is you'll see you start out with a headline. Sometimes you'll see a catchy photograph, and then the introduction. So that's what we just talked about. The introduction is a chance where, we talk about and we hook in the leaders, hook in the readers, as it says. And then what you can do is you can add a lead in if you want, and it says, after your intro, you can segue into your main points. If you're doing a list post, you might say the main points are, but then you get into the main points and conclusion. If you want, ask for feedback and share related posts. At this time, we don't really need all of these things, but this is one example. Another example is to do it like this, where you have a headline, you have your opening paragraph, an image, a subhead, content, a call to action if you want, and that can be like it says here, click to retweet a quote or click to download something. Weird at this point in time don't really have calls to action, so we will skip those, but you have an opening paragraph, image, subhead, content, subhead, content, subhead, content. So if you look at an example from an organization like Social Media Examiner, which is one of the most trafficked social media blogs in the world, you can see what they do here. So how to get started. So we can see that this was just posted today. Thinking of getting started, wondering how other brands are doing, and then this is what you're going to get. So you see nice short paragraphs, an image, then big subhead, then short paragraphs, video or visual, short paragraphs, visual. There's their call to action. Again, we don't have it, but they have a conference. Short paragraphs with bulleted list, then another example of subhead. So you can go and you can look at different examples and you'll see what other people are doing, and that can help you know how to lay out your blog post. I'm not worried about the layout yet. We'll do more of that in class. What I'm worried about and what I want you to focus and concentrate on is the content. So basically, and this can be a tweetable if you want to share it out. If you want to have an effective digital presence and build your audience, all you have to do is be helpful, center your content on your audience, not you. So your homework is to check out that headline hacks. So the link is here for you guys to check out, and then continue working on these items. Your website about page, we'll look at those in class on Friday. Your website setup overall, we'll have some Q&A with Wix, and then the draft of blog post 1. So that's what we're going to talk about in class, and we're going to review those. So those will be our items for homework when we meet on Friday. So if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in class Friday.